Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this fellowships overview. I'm Donna Brice Pacheco. I'm the Associate Director of Fellowships here at Beyond Barnard. And today we will be talking about what fellowships are, the approach that we use here for finding the right fellowship. I want to do some myth busting and talk about some common misconceptions about it. We'll do a little bit of a reflection on your own qualifications and how to approach this process. And then we'll do a very quick overview on some of the highlighted fellowships. And towards the very end, I'll share an ideal application timeline that you can refer to if you're considering applying for fellowships in this application cycle. So the question that I get often is, what are fellowships? And the way that we define it, you might hear scholarships, opportunities, but for the purpose of the work that I do here, fellowships are funded opportunities that offer space and time for you to develop both academic and professional interest. And above all, they can be a great tool for community building, and to meet people that share similar interests. Um, Fellowships, like I said, can be a very, very broad term and it can be used in a lot of different contexts. But the portfolio of fellowships that I work with here at Beyond Barnard is typically for funded experiences for you to either do research or study or teach abroad or do some sort of work, so to speak, rather than those that are tuition expenses based. Again, there are a few exceptions to it, and I'll mention them towards the end. Um, Something else to know about the fellowships that I'll talk about here is that most deadlines are a year in advance. There's no such a thing as getting started too early if you're thinking about any of these. But rather, the sooner that you get started, the better prepared, and the stronger your application might be. So what do I do? What's my role here in this office? I do guidance for students and alum in both identifying the specific national scholarships as well as developing application materials, including the essays that you have to write, interview prep, essay support, and the like. I do this type of workshops and events. If you are applying for a big scholarship in the fall, like Fulbright, Rhodes, Marshall, one of those, you are gonna get a whole range of programming and support over the summer. We really believe in cohort building and the benefit of working with your peers in this process rather than competing against them. And I also do a ton of individual advising. At different stages, you might want to brainstorm or talk about your ideas as you're sort of gearing up to get started writing. And as you have your essays and drafts of them, we can meet to review them and just talk about ways of strengthening them. At Beer Barnard, I like reinforcing this idea that there are tons of fellowships out there, but if you just look up on Google, even if you just type up fellowships in STEM or fellowships for public service, you are going to get a minimum of 200 hits. And that can be overwhelming. That's sort of what is out there mentality of seeing what you can apply for um, can be counterproductive in that, there are a ton of things that you could qualify for, but we really believe that the process starts with self-reflection and thinking about what is it that you have to offer. What are the opportunities that align with your goals and the interests that you have and what you're seeking to accomplish? And departing from there to seek the opportunities that are better suited and that are a good fit for those interests. Um, Before I delve more into this approach, I wanted to make a mention about AI. There's been so much conversation about the use of AI and the different roles that it has and it doesn't have. And just for the purpose of fellowships and the application, I think that AI could be a great resource. It's not something that I necessarily encourage. But it's here, and if you feel so compelled to use it, there's specific ways that I think could be productive, such as identifying opportunities that are aligned with your interests. Again, there's so many fellowships, scholarships, things out there that doing a search with artificial intelligence can give you a sort of narrower um, list of things that might be more closely related to what either your research interests or what you're hoping to do. Another use that I like, and it's something that I have done in the past, is sort of draft of emails for these so-called cold emails when you're trying to establish those first connections with researchers or people in your field. Um, and lastly, just to build your knowledge in a different country or a different area that you're trying to explore through your fellowships. Um, it's good as a starting point. I think that AI could have a positive role in just getting you started, but it's definitely not a good idea to use it to develop any sort of written materials or the essays and so on. And I'm happy to talk more about this. Um, so going back to how do you narrow down the list of fellowships or how do you find and approach this process? Um, well, you should ask yourself what is it that you need or want to accomplish over the coming semester or over the coming year before you graduate. What type of experience would you find more valuable? Is there anything specific that you would like to do, like learning a language? Do you want to go abroad and be part of a cohort? In a different country? Do you want to do independent research before you graduate? Um, and something that I encourage everyone to do is to think about, and be honest with yourself about what's your work style. Are you someone who thrives on your own and are very self-motivated and likes to explore different cultures and have language skills? Or are you someone that needs structure? I promise you, there are opportunities for each type of person, but the more you know what is it that you need and what you want, the easiest is going to be to identify those. And of course, think about this in the broader context of your time here at Barnard. What are your short-term and long-term goals and manage your time? Also thinking about your privileges and limitations, and what is going to be the accessibility um, of services and needs for your own needs when you're abroad. It's an important thing to consider. Um, Fellowships are a great opportunity for you to explore an area that you're interested in a very low stakes environment. It has a beginning and an end, and nothing is going to happen if you decide that you don't want to pursue what you did it once it ends, but you will walk away with clarity about what are the things that you learn and how to move forward. So I would love to hear some assumptions about fellowships, and I will move on to do some myth busting in the next couple slides. Some of the things that I have heard is that, and this is probably the top first, is that fellowships are just too competitive. They're hard to win. It's not worth putting the time and effort. And my answer is yes, they're very competitive and they're also much more accessible than you might think. Barnard has been a Fulbright top producing institution for 8 years in a row now. And our statistics reflect that about 1 in every 3 applicants get Fulbright when they apply, which means that not only that it's perfectly attainable, but it also means that there is a huge community of Barnard Fulbright alum that are out there that are excited to work with you and support you in your application process, if this is something that you're interested in exploring for yourself. Myth number two, there's not a fellowship for people like me or for this type of project that I'm interested in doing. Um, I beg to disagree. This is not an exhaustive list of the opportunities that are in the portfolio that I work with here at Beyond Barnard. And, these are largely categorized between educational costs, international experience, research, and professional development. But the reality is that there is a lot of overlap, and there are many, many other opportunities out there that you can tap into, depending on where do you want to go in the world, if you want to do a niche project, and so on and so forth. Don't be intimidated by sort of the big name or by how small it looks. I assure you, if it exists out there, we can work on it. Number three, I need to have a 4.0 GPA, or if I'm academically successful, these opportunities will sort of come to me. Not necessarily. Depending on the specific fellowship that you're applying for, different areas from this chart are going to apply to you. The reality is that most of them do require a GPA, but 4.0 is definitely not the standard. You'd be surprised to know that Fulbright doesn't have a GPA requirement. Um, Other fellowships like Rhodes, Marshall, Goldwater, their minimum GPA is actually 3.6 or 3.7. So there is literally some space there. But if you think about it the other way around, most of the people who are applying also have an amazing GPA. So what I encourage folks to think about is beyond that GPA, what is it that makes you stand out? Is it the research that you've done? Are internships? Are there things that sort of accompany that academic record that can make the academic excellence portion really shine? There's other fellowships like Truman and also Rhodes that really value community engagement and leadership. And this is not necessarily being president of a club or being sort of the most known person on campus. They really care about public service, about making the world a better place. And I like to think and talk about this in I verbs. So initiating, informing, implementing initiatives. What are the things that you have been able to do that have made your time at Barnard or at the club that you're in a better place? Um, and then communication skills. All of these applications are gonna have a written component. You're gonna have to write essays, some long, some short, or a research proposal. And most of them do require an interview. So your communication skills are going to be tested through and through. So start thinking about ways in which you can exercise and strengthen them, maybe through conferences, publishing your work, getting used to getting feedback, presenting in front of the classroom, that sort of thing. And lastly, and I would say that arguably the most important part is the fit. We keep coming back to this idea that you can be, fill the criteria, but if your trajectory goals and the mission of the specific scholarship don't align with what you want to do, you're not going to be a good candidate. So finding a good fit between the fellowship and your interests is potentially the most important thing. And here. And there's many other myths, fellowships are only for recent grads. That's not true. There's fellowships that are only available to freshmen or only available to sophomores and so on. Don't wait until senior year to think about this. This idea that most fellowships are for low-income students, that's not true. Most of the ones that I work with actually are based on merit and fit. So your income or your parents' income or economic hardship are not part of the equation. Um, Also, small fellowships are not worth applying for. What does a small fellowship mean? If you are looking for a specific funding to get something off the ground, even the smallest amount of money could make a difference. And thinking that these opportunities you build on them through time can really change your perspective on that. So you're not applying for a small thing, by getting funding from an agency or organization, then you are going to have a better standing to apply for bigger and bigger things. The application process is cyclical. You are going to go through it every application cycle until you get what you want. And once you get a fellowship, you're definitely not set. That's just the first stage in the process. Something that I also like to highlight is that um, fellowships shouldn't cost you any money to apply for them. If there's anything that says that you have to pay an application fee, that is a red flag in and of itself. So I would definitely say talk to me or talk to anyone here at Beyond Barnard to make sure that it's a legitimate. But most of the time, I would say 99.9% of the time, you shouldn't have to pay to apply to any opportunity. So I want you to walk away today knowing these main three things. Sure, not all fellowships are for everyone. The process is not one-off. It requires a community of support. That's why we emphasize sort of the cohort building, working closely not only with me, but with other advisors and with your peers that are going through the process at the same time. And there is value in the application process. Of course, we want you to get the funding. We want you to go and teach. We want you to go and be abroad. But in applying for these opportunities, you are going to strengthen your writing and feedback skills. There is nothing that's more humbling and more awkward than having your work torn apart by someone else and having to work on implementing comments and strengthening a proposal. You are going to exercise that muscle of meeting deadlines and pacing yourself to work on things that don't have a hard deadline as it relates to academic work. And hopefully you will clarify career goals and interests to get a sense of, what is it that comes next after your time here at Barnard. So I would want you to take about 5 minutes and try to answer as many of these questions. In an in-person setting, I like to sort of share with the larger group. Um, but I will just pause the recording here for a couple of minutes and you can think about it and pause it on your own, take a little break, and then we'll move on to the next slide. So the purpose of this exercise is really to get you thinking about some of the questions that you're going to find in the fellowships applications. Believe it or not, these are all pulled out from actual fellowship applications that really push you to think not only about your interests and your goals for now, but where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years and other things about you as a person that you're bringing to the table. So use that as an exercise, as an example to know that these are not some unreachable or sort of mythical applications. The questions are pretty straightforward. They just require honesty and self-awareness, which is arguably the hardest thing. All right. So let's move on to talk about some of the highlighted fellowships that I want to note for everyone. These two that I have on the screen, the Bourne Awards and the Critical Language Scholarship, are opportunities that allow folks to study a language intensively abroad. They were both created after 9/11. They're funded by the government and under the presumption that not enough people that know critical languages work in federal service. So the main difference between the two is the length of time that you're going to spend abroad. The Critical Language Scholarship, it's an immersive 10-week summer program, and they offer sort of a set number of languages, typically Japanese, Portuguese, Arabic are among the repeated ones, but typically it's between 8 and 10 languages. And you can apply as an undergrad at any level, in your first year or even in your last year. The deadline is consistently in November, and it's a great opportunity if you want to learn a language outside of the coursework, outside of Barnard, and then be able to use it in a longer experience like Fulbright or to go abroad post graduation. Then the boring, the deadline is in February. And the difference is that they prefer intensive language for an extended period of time. So you would be abroad either for a semester or a full academic year. And they do require that you serve in the federal government for a year after you complete your graduate degree. Um, that's not necessarily a bad thing. They would ensure that you get a job to fulfill this specific requirement. And they have more flexibility about which languages you can study abroad, different from the critical language scholarship. Um, if you are a junior and are interested in pursuing a graduate degree, either in public service or in humanities or social sciences, the Truman Scholarship and the Beinecke would be great opportunities. Truman offers up to $30,000 in funding for a master's degree if you're planning to pursue a career in public service. They're really looking for change agents, people that are going to make the world a better place. You can only apply as a junior, and campus nomination is required. The Beinecke funds a master's or a PhD program for folks interested in pursuing a career in research, only within the arts, humanities, or social sciences. Again, the tricky thing here is that you have to apply as a junior. So if you are a sophomore or even a junior now and you fit this criteria, definitely meet with me as soon as possible. For postgraduate opportunities, the Gaither Junior Fellows Program offers a research opportunity at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, where you would serve as a research assistant to academics, former government officials, lawyers, journalists, you name it, from around the world in a range of international affairs and issues. It's a very well-paid opportunity, and you would be living in DC. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to get a peek at that policy making and research that is not necessarily at a nonprofit or with the government itself. The Fulbright, which I'm sure many of you have heard about, funds a year abroad post-graduation, and they have three different options. You could conduct research, which implies that you have to come up with a research proposal of your own. Um, you could apply for a master's degree. This is only available at select countries, it's not everywhere. And the ETA option, which is to serve as an English teaching assistant. And Fulbright is in about 140 countries around the world. Many countries do require that you have language proficiency in their local language, but many others don't. So if you are on the fence about it, the time to start thinking about Fulbright is between now and March. The application doesn't open until April. So that's the time that recruitment starts and where you're going to see a lot of information sessions and workshops around it. So be on the lookout for it. There's no need for us to meet just yet. Just peruse through the website and definitely come to one of those Fulbright overviews. Because this is a postgrad opportunity, you need to apply as a junior. So in your junior year, you start a process to apply in October of your senior year or as a recent grad. Other opportunities that offer funding for grad school that are tied to leadership and policymaking are Knight Hennessy, which funds a graduate degree at Stanford in California and would fund pretty much any graduate degree that you want to pursue there. This is open to seniors and recent grads and open to international students. And then the big UK and Ireland awards like Rhodes, Marshall, Mitchell, and Gates. These are awards that would fund a graduate degree at universities in the UK. And they're really looking for the next world leaders. You know, these are not grad school fellowships. They're really looking for public service, outstanding academic performance, and significant leadership and service. Each of them have specific requirements about age and eligibility criteria. But most of the time you have to apply in your junior or senior year. Again, come talk to me in the coming months to discuss your interest in this. We have a fellowships database where you can explore other opportunities, and it's really great because you can actually filter by your specific interests. So make use of that. And I'm always open to answering your questions. You can schedule an appointment with me for fellowships advising through Handshake. This is my email on the screen, so feel free to reach out. Or you can always email us at beyondbarnard@barnard.edu, and your question will be directed as needed. I'm also doing drop-in office hours this semester on Tuesdays from 1 to 2. So if you have a fellowship specific question, instead of waiting for a one-on-one appointment, you can definitely come to those and I'd be happy to chat with you. And then I'll end with the ideal application timeline. Please feel free to screenshot, take a picture. I'm also going to share these slides with everyone who registered today. But this is sort of to give you a sense of, you know, when I say that it's not too early to get started, I mean it. You know, you can start working on your Fulbright application from your first year here at Barnard. And this is just some general guidelines to do that. I welcome any questions, and I'm gonna stop the recording now. Thank you.
Hi.